In a small cafe tucked away on a bustling city street, Sam sat alone at a corner table, nervously stirring his coffee with a spoon. The hum of conversations and the clinking of cups faded into the background. He kept looking at the door, waiting for her. The barista, noticing his unease, filled the air with the comforting scent of fresh pastries, but nothing could settle Sam's pounding heart. Just then, Mia walked in. Her hair fell in soft curls around her shoulders, and her eyes sparkled with a warmth that made everyone feel at ease. She spotted Sam immediately, her face lighting up like a sunrise, but as she approached, Sam noticed something different about her. There was a flutter of distraction in her gaze, as if her mind was already somewhere else. She said, sliding into the seat opposite him. "It's okay," Sam replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I was just thinking about what you said last. About the whole project," but instead of answering, Mia glanced toward the window. Sam followed her gaze and his breath caught in his throat. Outside, a small throng of reporters had gathered, cameras flashing and microphones poised. They were waiting, and the weight of that reality pressed down on him. He said, his tone sharper. She didn't respond. Instead, her eyes danced between the media swarm and her phone, which buzzed on the table. She picked it up, scrolling quickly, her face a mask of concentration. Sam's voice rose, tinged with frustration. She looked up then, her blue eyes filled with something he couldn't quite place fear maybe. "Sorry, Sam, it's just," he blurted out, a pang shooting through his chest. "I came here to talk to you and you're—" She opened her mouth but no words came out. Instead, her gaze darted back to the window and Sam followed her sight again. The media outside were getting restless and he could hear their voices rising, a cacophony of speculation. "Mia, please, talk to me." Sam's voice softened, desperation creeping in. The tension in the air was thick. That's when Mia took a deep breath and put her phone down, as if gathering the courage she needed. "Sam, listen, then tell me." He leaned closer, feeling the urgency in his voice. She hesitated, her fingers drumming on the table. "This project we've been working on, it's bigger than I thought, and well, the media," Sam pressed. "They want a story, they think they can turn this into something sensational if they catch wind of what we're really doing." Her words hung heavy in the air. Sam felt a mix of anger and confusion. "I thought we were in this together." Mia shook her head. "It's not like that, you don't understand, the stakes are high, I can't." As she spoke, Sam watched her eyes dart from the window to her phone again. There was determination in her voice, but it only deepened his confusion. "So what, you just ignore my questions?" The reporters outside were now shouting, their voices rising with excitement. Sam could catch whispers of his name. A rush of panic hit him and he pushed back in his chair, creating distance. She shot back, frustration bubbling over. "I'm trying to protect us, protect this project." Sam shouted, his voice echoing around the cafe, drawing glances from other patrons. Mia flinched, her face softening for just a moment. Sam could see it then, the fear beneath her bravado, but then the glint in her eye returned. He interrupted, "But you're not talking to me." At that, Mia exhaled sharply. "I can't hold your hand through this." Sam's heart sank. He stared at her, feeling the walls closing in. "This is our battle, Mia." Silence settled between them and their gazes locked, filled with hurt and confusion. The media outside grew louder, a storm ready to break, and Sam felt the phone vibrations beneath his hands. "Look," he said, taking a deep breath to steady himself. Mia's eyes widened and Sam watched as a flicker of pain crossed her face. "That's not what I mean, I want you here, I do," Sam pressed, "but if this blows up, it won't just affect me, it will ruin everything we've worked for." Her voice trembled and for a moment he saw the large burden she was carrying, but could she also see what she was doing to him? He paused, searching for the right words. Maybe it's too late. As if on cue, a loud shout erupted outside. Sam glanced over his shoulder, the crowd of reporters surging forward, excitement rippling through them. Someone had moved toward the cafe and he could see the unmistakable silhouette of a familiar face. "No," Mia muttered, her voice low and frightened. The door swung open and before they could hide, the gliding presence of a well-known figure strode in. It was the project lead, Jack, and he wore an expression of sheer determination. He called out, his voice booming over the cafe noise. "There you are. We need to talk." The tension snapped like a dry twig underfoot. Sam felt lost as Mia's attention shifted away from him yet again. Jack rushed over, the air thick with electric urgency. Jack said, barely giving Sam a glance, "We need to address the speculation." Sam felt like an outsider now, watching as Mia fell into a rhythm with Jack, answering his questions, casting Sam aside like an afterthought. A rush of anger boiled in his chest. He wanted to stand up, yell, to remind Mia that he was here too, that he mattered rather than just a shadow in their world. But as he watched, he realized he was wrong. He couldn't force her to see him. Anxiety pricked at him like 100 needles, reminding him that she had to make a choice. Caught between his heartache and the reality outside, Sam swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. Maybe the truth was that Mia was better suited to this chaos. Maybe he had been naive to think they could share everything when the weight of the world was already crashing down on them. And as the murmurs of the media grew louder, he understood one thing, that sometimes love means stepping away. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to let go. Sam stood up, shaking off the final threads of restraint. The air between them felt as heavy as the weight of what lay ahead. He took one last look at Mia, sitting there, surrounded by the noise of the world, beautiful, fierce, and utterly consuming. "I'm sorry, Mia," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the din. With that, he turned and walked out, feeling the chill of the cafe air replace the warmth of her once hopeful glance. The chaos outside swirled around him, a sea of uncertainty, and he stepped into it, ready to forge his own path away from the storm of her distractions. Lost in the throng of voices and flashing lights, Sam felt a strange sense of freedom wash over him. While their future hung in the balance, it was the choice, his choice, that would guide him forward, away from the tangled mess of unspoken words and unfulfilled promises. And as he walked away, he realized that sometimes the silence between two hearts carries the loudest weight. The cafe was buzzing with the kind of energy that fills the air just before something unexpected happens. It was a cool afternoon, and people were scattered at tables, some working on laptops, others lost in conversation. In the corner, a young man named Eric sat alone, tapping his fingers nervously on the table. The rich, inviting scent of coffee filled his senses, but it did nothing to calm his racing heart. He had rehearsed what he wanted to say 1,000 times, but this moment felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to jump. Across the room, Julie entered. She wore a light scarf that danced with her every step, her hair flowing like silk in the breeze. When she saw Eric, her face brightened, but something in her eyes held a flicker of distraction. Right away, Eric sensed something was off. He had been waiting for this meeting, and more than anything, he wanted to know if they were on the same page after all the ups and downs. Julie chirped, her voice cutting through his anxious thoughts as she slid into the seat opposite him. "It's fine," he replied, forcing a smile. "I was just..." As he leaned forward, ready to dive into his carefully planned questions, he noticed her gaze drift toward the window. A sudden shift in her expression made him pause. Outside, a small group began to gather, and he caught sight of cameras and microphones. The media were waiting, and dread pooled in his stomach as he connected the dots. This wasn't just any cafe, it was the eye of a brewing storm. Eric's voice trembled with urgency. "Listen, can we just..." Julie replied, waving her hand dismissively as she kept glancing at the window. The vibrant energy between them felt suddenly charged with tension. He pressed, frustration spilling into his voice. "I mean, are you even paying attention?" At that moment, a spark in her eyes dulled. "Eric, please," she said, her tone sharp. "I'm trying to keep everything together. If they found out..." Those 4 words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Eric's gut twisted as he realized the weight of their situation. Her eyes danced again toward the window, and the media seemed to grow more restless. He could hear snippets of their conversation filtering through the glass words like scandal and expose, cut through the air like a knife. "Julie," he said, leaning back, the anger simmering within him, trying to find a way out. "You don't have to pretend everything's okay if you have a question for me." But her focus remained on the window, the crowd outside a mesmerizing distraction. "Eric, just think about what could happen if this gets out." He felt anger morph into something heavier, pain and betrayal settled in. "What about what I'm feeling?" Finally, she broke eye contact, her face falling. "I didn't mean to ignore you, it's just I have to protect this project." She had grown so absorbed in her fear that she had stopped listening to him. Eric could feel a surge of rage building, but more than that, a crushing realization of how alone he really was. "So what? We don't talk about us anymore." Her voice rose slightly, and for a fleeting moment, frustration colored her cheeks. "I'm trying to navigate this, Eric. It's not just about you and me." His words hung between them, heavy with angst. "You're too focused on everything else." A part of him wanted to reach over and take her hand to remind her of the bond they shared, but another part felt like standing his ground. Either we're in this together or we're not. Her mouth opened in shock, and for a moment, Eric thought he might actually see the anger bubble to the surface. But instead, her gaze shifted out the window once more, the crowd a wave of noise and anticipation. "Eric," she said, her voice quiet now, almost tremulous, "I'm scared." Then, before he could respond, the door swung open wide, catching his attention. Few reporters pushed through, and the atmosphere shifted with electric intensity. They were here for Jamie, and this felt like the moment the dam had broken. "This is not just some office project," Julie muttered under her breath, returning to full alertness. He felt anguish flare within him. "And I'm a part of your life." For a fleeting moment, he thought she might argue back, but instead, her eyes widened as she noticed the media stirring outside. "They're looking for you," she said, almost in a whisper. Eric blinked, the reality crashing in. "They know you've been at the center of this," she replied, and he could hear the almost inaudible tremor in her voice. He could hear the commotion growing outside, voices of excitement mingling with urgency. The flashing lights felt like a siren call, and panic fluttered through him. Julie looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. "No, Eric, if you run, it'll look worse," he snapped, frustration boiling over. "You're willing to sacrifice our peace of mind because of what?" Eric wasn't ready to face the world outside, not when so much hung in the balance. But in that moment, he could see Julie's mind was already racing, plotting a course of action to keep both of them from falling apart. In a heartbeat, her phone buzzed with tension, and she checked the screen, biting her lip. He demanded, unable to hold back anymore. She exclaimed, her patience fraying at the edges. "I'm trying to juggle everything." Eric, the media could ruin us, can't you see? Eric shot back. She retorted, her voice rising again. The tension swirled around them like a tornado, and he felt trapped in this emotional whirlwind. The warmth of the cafe felt oppressive, stifling, as the crowd outside pressed in, hungry for story. Eric asked, his voice steadier now, "You're losing sight of what matters." She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, the door burst open again, and more reporters flooded in, eyes scanning the room for the story they craved. Eric's heart raced, and he glanced around, feeling like he was caught in a trap. One of the reporters shouted, and in that moment he saw her heart twist with a mix of vulnerability and resolve. "You have to decide right now," Eric said, voice firm but shaken. "Are you going to stand by me?" Silence enveloped them. The world outside felt like a distant echo as they stood on this precipice. Eric felt every heartbeat pulsing in his ears, and the expectation hung heavy in the air. "Cut through the noise, Julie," he urged, desperation creeping into his tone. "Tell me that I matter in this too, because if not, I need to know." Julie's eyes softened, and a flicker of uncertainty danced across her face. "Eric," he implored, gripping the edge of the table, "I want to protect you," she said finally, a mix of determination and fear flooding her voice. A wave of relief rushed through him, and yet he still felt the tightening knot in his stomach. "Then we face this together. We have to meet them, talk, and not run away from this." Just then the reporters turned to them, a medley of questions erupting into the air. "Eric, Julie," the cacophony of voices was dizzying, and Eric's heart pounded against his chest. Julie met his gaze, her eyes fierce with conviction. "Okay, let's do this, together." The word felt like a lifeline, a promise that they wouldn't let external chaos tear apart what they had. And as they rose from their chairs, ready to step out into the frenzy, Eric felt a surge of adrenaline. They were more than just a project, they were a team, and no matter what awaited them outside, they would face it head-on, no longer consumed by fear. With one final look at each other, they stepped toward the door, ready to confront the storm, ready to stand side by side. As the world outside loomed larger, they knew that whatever the outcome, they would always choose each other first, and that was the only way forward. The cafe buzzed with noise, cups clinking and people chatting, but in the corner, everything felt surreal. Liam sat facing the window, drumming his fingers against the table. Outside, the world was vibrant, pedestrians walked by, laughter echoed in the air, and the sun poured warm light through the glass. But inside him, everything felt cold and chaotic. Then he saw her. Sophie walked in, her hair flowing like a golden curtain and her smile bright enough to cut through the gloom wrapping around him. She made his heart race with a mix of joy and anxiety. Liam had been waiting for this moment, ready to discuss what had been weighing on his mind. But as she settled in front of him, her eyes danced around the cafe, never fully landing on him. She said brightly, but there was a hint of distraction in her tone. "It's okay," he replied, forcing a soft smile. And just like that, as if on cue, she glanced out the window again, her smile fading. Liam followed her gaze, and his stomach dropped like a stone. Outside, gathered in a disorganized throng, was a group of reporters, cameras flashing, microphones extended like the arms of hungry beasts. They were here for him, and the air thickened with anticipation. Sophie turned back to him, and her expression had changed. "Can we just—" Liam's heart raced faster. "But this is important," Sophie flinched, her eyes darting back outside. The reporters stirred, and Liam could hear snippets of their conversations break through the glass. Words like rumors and scandal mixed with the laughter from the cafe, creating a dissonant melody of chaos. "Liam," she said, her voice lowered. He echoed, feeling anger bubble within him. "What about us? It feels like you care more about the project than our relationship." At that, Sophie's posture stiffened. "That's not fair. I'm trying to protect both of us." Liam shot back, unable to keep the hurt from his voice. For a moment, the tension hung like a thick fog between them. Sophie's gaze fell to the table, her hands clenched into fists. "I never meant to make you feel that way," she said quietly, "but you don't understand the pressure I'm under." Outside, the reporters' voices grew more intense, pressing in like an unrelenting tide. "Liam," one shouted, and his heart sank further. He could almost feel their eyes piercing through the window, hungry for a story, ready to pounce. "Look at them," Sophie whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "They'll twist everything we say." "But I am right here," Liam replied. "I need your attention." She finally looked up, her eyes searching his face for something. Liam's voice cracked with desperation. "What about our future? Can we even have one if the media is in the mix?" Her expression shifted, and for a heartbeat, he could see the conflict war within her. "It's not just my career, Liam. It's everything we've worked for. This project means more than just paying the bills." His words hung heavily around them. The cafe felt smaller now, the world outside pressing in. Sophie's eyes glistened with emotion now. "I'm scared." Just then, a loud cheer erupted from outside. A group of reporters had spotted a familiar figure making their way toward the cafe. Liam could see the frenzy grow, the vultures circling. Panic pulsed through him. Liam asked, his heart racing again. "It's the director of the project," Sophie replied, her face paling. Liam interrupted, feeling a wave of confusion wash over him. "No, we can't just run away." Her words trailed off as she glanced around, anxiety etched on her features. he demanded, feeling a mix of frustration and vulnerability. Sophie closed her eyes for a moment, collecting herself. Okay, let's stay calm, we can handle this if we're smart. Liam felt the heat of anger rise again, but then he noticed her hands trembling slightly. No, he said firmly. Liam, she said, trying to calm him. You don't understand what they're capable of. That's the problem, Sophie. You're treating me like I'm some fragile item you need to protect. I'm part of this too. She looked at him, her eyes finally locking onto his, as if the wall she had built around her heart was beginning to crumble. But the word hung in the air, and for a moment they stood on the precipice of what could ignite either their destruction or redemption. Liam was about to say something when the door burst open and reporters flooded in, microphones poised, cameras flashing. The noise rushed in like a tidal wave, threatening to engulf them. Liam, they called, voices overlapping in a cacophony of questions. Stay close to me, Sophie whispered, taking his hand, and together they moved forward, squeezing through the chaos as if they were navigating a minefield. One reporter shouted, thrusting a microphone in his direction. Another added their enthusiasm palpable. A sea of questions washed over them, and he felt the walls closing in. Pressing against the tide was becoming increasingly challenging, and his heart raced as he searched for a way to articulate the thoughts swirling in his mind. He looked to Sophie, and in that brief second he could see fear and determination intertwined in her expression. She squeezed his hand tighter, her grip a reminder that they were still united at this moment. Sophie called, her voice steady and commanding. The reporters hesitated, sensing the intensity of their conversation. Just a moment, Liam echoed, his voice softer but equally resolute, wanting to buy them time. He needed a second to gather his thoughts, to understand how they could work through this together. A reporter urged, leaning in closer, eyes glinting with ambition. Your future is at stake. Of course, but Sophie began, but Liam could feel the weight of the moment demanding more than just polite responses. No, he said, stepping forward, the sudden decision solidifying in his chest. He took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment. This project means something to both of us, but it doesn't define us. Our lives are about more than just our careers. The reporters fell silent for just a moment, surprised by his blunt honesty, but he saw the cameras still capturing every word. Sophie looked at him, a mixture of admiration and astonishment in her eyes. He pressed on, emboldened. Wow, one of the reporters remarked, stunned. The atmosphere shifted as if they were all holding their breath, caught in the gravity of his words. Another asked, intrigued. Liam took a calming breath. We're going to continue our project, but we're going to prioritize each other above everything else. This isn't just about the media or the pressure we're under. Sophie's grip on his hand tightened almost involuntarily, and her smile warmed him against the cold tension surrounding them. Yes, she chimed in, a fire igniting in her voice. We will not be defined by outside opinions. With that, a ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd, a buzz of excitement ignited by their unexpected breakout. For the first time, Liam felt like they were turning the tide together, pushing back against the storm. One reporter shouted, excitement tinged with disbelief. Liam and I have a strong partnership that's about so much more than this project, Sophie said, her voice clear and authentic. An unanticipated warmth spread through him, and for the first time that afternoon he felt truly seen. It wasn't just about dodging questions, it was about finding common ground, both professionally and personally. As they stood there, hands intertwined, the weight of the moment shifted, and he could see the realization dawn in Sophie's eyes. They had faced the storm together, and together they had chosen clarity over confusion. The reporters pressed forward, eager for more details, and as the whirlwind of attention intensified, Liam pulled Sophie closer, forming a protective barrier around their hearts. Let's make this work together, he whispered, a silent pact echoing between them. And so in that bustling cafe on that chaotic day, they turned the tide, ready to embrace whatever came next, not as individuals, but united in purpose, heart, and vision. Together they would face the world. Together they would rise above the noise and create their own story. The cafe was a cozy oasis on a bustling street, filled with the scent of brewing coffee and the sound of cheerful chatter. But amidst the warmth and comfort, Sam sat at his usual table, feeling a storm brewing inside him. It was the kind of day when the world felt too bright and he couldn't quite find his place in it. He had been anxiously waiting for Lily, knowing that today was the day they needed to talk about their future. When she finally walked in, his heart did a little flip. Lily was radiant, her smile lighting up the room, but as she approached, something about her demeanor felt off. Her eyes darted around the cafe, scanning the room as if she was looking for someone or something. Sam's heart sank. Did she even notice him? She said, sliding into the seat opposite him. It's fine, Sam replied, forcing a smile. I wanted to discuss that project we've been working on, but she wasn't really listening. Instead, her gaze shifted to the window again. Outside, a small crowd was gathering, cameras flashing, voices rising in excitement. Sam's stomach dropped as he realized who they were, the media. They were here for him, and he could almost feel their eyes sharp as knives, trying to pierce through the glass. He tried again, desperation creeping into his voice. She didn't respond. Instead, her expression changed as she refocused on the scene outside, her heartbeat matching the mounting tension. Sam's heart raced with a mix of anxiety and fortitude. He urged, leaning forward. "Sam, please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He shot back, frustration boiling just under the surface. That moment, their table was an island amidst a growing storm. The reporters outside were becoming restless, calling out for him by name. Sam felt the walls closing in, the pressure escalating like a balloon on the verge of bursting. Lily's eyes darted back to him, filled with uncertainty. "You need to understand, this could ruin everything." "Catch us doing what?" he interrupted, his voice rising. Lily shifted in her seat, seemingly lost in her thoughts. "It's more complicated than that, Sam. There's so much at stake." Her voice trailed off, the fear in her eyes heavy and deep. "Then what?" Sam felt a sharp pain in his chest. She chewed on her bottom lip, visibly torn between her duty to the project and her feelings for him. "I'm trying to protect everything," she finally replied, her voice breaking slightly. He wanted to scream, to shake her and make her see the truth. Bigger, like a headline, like some sensational news piece. She snapped, then took a breath to calm herself. "It's just. If they find out about us, it could blow everything up." Outside, the crowd was getting louder, the essence of anticipation swirling around them. Sam turned to look out the window. What will they even say? That we're friends, collaborators? Lily whispered, a fierce intensity blazing in her eyes. "The media twists everything." His heart sank and frustration turned into sorrow. "So we pretend we don't care about each other." At that moment, a brief silence fell between them, buzzing with unspoken words. Sam could feel the air thicken, time stretching into eternity as they stared at each other. For anything to change, one of them had to come forward, to say the words that had been lodged in their throats. "This is our chance," Sam said finally, his voice lowering but stronger than before. "I'm tired of hiding." Her gaze softened, but then she shook her head as if trying to clear a fog. "You don't understand how much pressure I have on me," he pressed. "What will happen to us if we keep living like this?" But before she could respond, the door swung open dramatically and a few reporters burst in, their excitement palpable. "Liam," they shouted, eyes gleaming like glassy beads. Another one called, thrusting a microphone toward him. Lily's eyes widened in panic. "Oh no," she breathed, her voice edging on frantic. "Let's just walk out," Sam suggested, suddenly feeling invincible. "We don't have to answer them." She grabbed his hand, her pulse racing. He could see the internal battle playing out behind her eyes. He shot back, growing more frustrated by the second. The room felt like it was closing in on him, each reporter a spotlight, each camera a threat. "Just act normal," she started, but it came out as pleading. Then it hit him. "Normal? Do you even know how to be normal?" The tension was thick as anger and hurt pulsed between them. Outside, the voices rose, hungry for confirmation, like wolves sniffing the scent of fresh meat. "Liam," one shouted. The question jolted Sam out of his thoughts. The world outside was no longer a distant murmur. It was roaring like 1,000 waves crashing over them. "You need to decide right now," Sam said, meeting Lily's gaze with an intensity that spread like wildfire. She opened her mouth to respond, but before any words could escape, another round of cheers erupted outside and the tension escalated like a pressure cooker about to explode. He thought of the possibilities, the weight of the world hanging over them. "I can't believe this is happening," Lily said, her voice shaking. "Face it," he replied firmly. "Together." The reporters were beginning to push further inside, their hunger visible, ready to devour any hint of a story. Liam, as Sam felt the sharp pull of panic, he made a decision that would change everything. He shouted, the weight of urgency pushing him forward. "We want to make sure that everyone knows who we are to each other." The crowd went silent, shocked by his outburst. Lily looked at him, her expression a mixture of admiration and uncertainty, as if she was seeing him for the first time. "Together," he repeated, his voice steady. "We want the world to know that we're together." The reporter stood frozen, processing the weight of his words. Sam could feel the tension shift as the air thickened with anticipation. One of the reporters finally managed to ask, his excitement tempered with awe at the unexpected development. "Yes," Sam said, taking a breath, solidifying his resolve. "Lily is not just my colleague, she's more than that. She's the person I care about most." Lily's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment the world around them fell silent. He saw the flicker of fear in her eyes wash away, replaced by something warm and grateful. Another reporter pressed. "It will only make it stronger," Sam declared, his heart feeling lighter. "We're committed to each other and our goals." The atmosphere shifted, the tension cracking like a fragile shell. With those words, something changed. No longer were they frightened by the media, they had taken control of their story. Lily squeezed his hand, and a smile broke through her earlier fear, radiant and bright. "I stand by him," she said, her voice clearer than before. As the reporters rushed forward for more details and the cameras captured their newfound confidence, the world outside no longer felt threatening, but rather filled with potential. In a single moment, they forged their destiny, pushing against fear and doubt. Together, they turned what could have been a catastrophe into a celebration. The café that had felt like a cage transformed into a launching pad. Hand in hand, Sam and Lily stood ready to share their truth with the world, unafraid and intertwined, facing whatever lay ahead. And perhaps in the chaos and noise, they had found their rhythm, a dance of connection, vulnerability, and unwavering support. Together they would navigate the storm, and that bond would only grow stronger in the light of day. It was a gray afternoon, the kind that coats the world in a dense fog that muffles sound and wraps you in a shroud of uncertainty. Inside the bustling café, where the scent of coffee mingled with laughter, Alex was at a small, secluded table, his unease palpable. Tapped his fingers against the table, a habit he couldn't seem to shake as he waited for Mia. When she finally walked in, the atmosphere shifted. Mia lit up the room, her vibrant energy a stark contrast to the gloom outside, but today something felt different. There was an edge to her smile, a flicker of distraction in her eyes that he couldn't ignore. She exclaimed as she slid into the chair across from him. "It's okay," he replied, forcing a smile despite the flutter of anxiety in his stomach. "I wanted to talk about the presentation next week." But instead of engaging, Mia's gaze flickered to the window. The air felt charged, a sudden tension wrapping itself around them like a tight band. Alex turned to look, and his stomach dropped at the sight outside. A gathering of reporters had formed, cameras clicking wildly, their excitement palpable. They were here for him. He said, panic seeping into his voice, "Do you see them?" "Let's just focus on the presentation," she said quickly, dismissing his concern. He urged, his heart racing. He tried again, feeling desperation spill over. "We need to address this, about us, about the project, just..." She hesitated, her eyes still locked on the window, the din outside growing increasingly overwhelming. Alex could sense the tide shifting, the pressure building in the air. "Alex," she said quietly, finally meeting his gaze, but her voice trembled. "See us talking." He leaned in, frustration boiling to the surface. She snapped, her facade cracking just slightly. "If they catch anything, it'll throw everything off." He shot back, unable to contain his hurt. "I thought we were in this together." A deep silence fell around them, thick enough to cut. Mia's face fell, and for a brief moment Alex could see the inner turmoil reflected in her expression. "I'm really trying," she murmured, her voice softer, almost breaking. "But you don't understand the stakes. My career, your career." Outside, the reporters were growing restless, each voice colliding with the other, creating a deafening chorus that seemed to intrude on their bubble. The weight of their expectations pressed against him. He pleaded. Mia's eyes flashed with emotion. He exclaimed, the frustration boiling over again. "You're hiding, this whole thing feels like a masquerade. Came here to talk about what's real between us, and you're just..." The tension between them was electric. Mia's gaze flickered to the window once more. "Please just think this through, you have so much potential." For a quick second, her fear broke through, and Alex felt a pang in his chest. He understood the pressure she was under, but it only deepened the sensation that their connection was slipping through their fingers. "I can't keep pretending everything's fine," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "I'm scared too." Suddenly there was a loud cheer outside. A group of people had spotted someone important, and the noise escalated. Alex turned to the window, feeling a rush of panic. "Mia, we need to leave now," he said, his voice urgent. She replied, and he could see her mind racing. "If we run, it'll only make them more suspicious." "What do you want me to do, stand here and let them pick apart our lives?" His voice escalated in pitch. "No." She argued back, frustration mingling with fear. "But if we show weakness, they'll pounce." At that moment, he felt a surge of determination. "Then let's be strong together. If we're hiding, then what's the point of fighting for something real, for something we believe in?" Mia's eyes widened, and for the first time the tension between them shifted. She took a deep breath, her resolve wavering. "First, let's just talk." He paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "If we give them something real, if we're open, maybe they won't sensationalize everything." For a moment the silence enveloped them again. Outside, the reporters were pushing in closer, trying to catch any hint of a story. "I don't know, Alex," Mia whispered, uncertainty marring her features. "We'll deal with that if it comes," he replied, his voice steady. "But I refuse to let them dictate our lives. This is about us." The heat of the moment crackled in the air as Mia searched his eyes for some form of reassurance. Finally, she took a deep breath and nodded, as if wrestling with her own demons. "You're right." Together they stood, their hearts pounding in sync, ready to face the onslaught together. As they stepped toward the exit, the reporters outside pushed eagerly toward the door. "Liam." A reporter shouted, cameras ready to capture their every move. Alex and Mia stepped outside, the chill of the air hitting them as the noise intensified. The crowd was a sea of faces, eager to catch a glimpse of the story unfolding before them. One reporter shouted. Another demanded, curiosity tinging their voices. Liam and Mia exchanged glances, the moment charged with anticipation. "Yes, we're together," Mia said, her voice ringing out confidently, surprising even herself. The crowd fell silent for a breath. Alex could see the gears turning behind the reporter's eyes, sensing that something unexpected had just unfolded in front of them. A voice called out, and it felt like an invitation rather than an interrogation. Alex took a breath, empowered by Mia's boldness. "It means everything to us." Mia nodded, her confidence building. "Yes, we're not defined by the rumors or the media." With that declaration, the air shifted again. The reporters began to nod as if understanding that this was not merely a story. It was a connection built on trust, honesty, and vulnerability. another journalist called out. Alex felt a smile tug at his lips. Doubt is natural, but we're stronger together and we won't let anything tear us apart. Lily stepped forward, her expression fierce. And we both deserve to be happy regardless of what the world thinks, so no, we won't hide. As the reporters absorbed their words, a new tension settled, one filled with respect rather than scrutiny. The chaos outside faded slightly, shifting into the background as they stood together, stronger than before. In that instant, they chose each other. They chose to face the world not as just voices in a whirlwind of rumors, but as a unified front. As they wrapped up their moment in front of the cameras, a sense of relief washed over Alex. They hadn't just made a statement, they had created their own narrative in the midst of chaos. And as they walked hand in hand back into the cafe, they felt free, liberated from the shadows of fear and uncertainty. They had taken control of their story and turned what could have been a catastrophe into a moment of empowerment. With every step they took together, they felt the weight lift, ready to face the future, buoyed not just by their work but by the unshakable bond they had forged. Together they were unstoppable, and for the first time in a long time they truly felt like they could take on the world. The rain pelted the window like 1,000 tiny drummers, each drop adding to the tension in the air. Inside the small cafe, the atmosphere was warm, almost cozy, but for Jake, it felt like a pressure cooker. He sat at a table for two, hunched over a mug of coffee that had long gone cold, lost in thought. He kept glancing at the door, his heart pounding in anticipation. Today was the day. Today he would finally ask her. When Emily walked in, everything else faded away. She was radiant, shaking off her umbrella like removing a burdensome weight. A soft smile spread across her face when she caught sight of him, and in that moment, Jake felt a surge of hope. Would today finally be the day they crossed the line from friends to something more? Emily chirped as she approached, her hair damp but glowing. Her energy lit up the room. "It's okay," Jake said, forcing a smile. "I was just thinking about..." But before he could elaborate, she glanced outside, her expression shifting to one of concern. Jake followed her gaze, and a sinking feeling washed over him. Outside the cafe, a small group of reporters had gathered, cameras poised, microphones ready. They were there for him, a voice shouted from outside, instantly steering his focus back to the chaos beyond the glass. Emily's eyes flitted between Jake and the window. She whispered, a note of panic creeping into her voice. "Looks like it," he replied, his stomach churning. "But this isn't the time for that. Jake, we really can't let them see us like this," she insisted, the worry threading through her words. He asked, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "We're friends, right?" "Yeah, but not about love, Jake," she said, glancing outside again, a flicker of fear overtaking her features. He replied, his voice rising slightly. "What's wrong with us?" The tension between them thickened, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. Jake could see the war playing out in Emily's eyes. She was torn between her concern for him and the undeniable feelings that she had yet to confront. She exclaimed, her hands shaking slightly. He countered, feeling his heart race as doubt and anxiety collided within him. "What do you think is at stake here?" Emily stared at him, visibly shaken. "It's not that simple." He shot back. "What do you want me to focus on, Emily?" She opened her mouth, but the words caught in her throat. In that moment, everything felt heavy, as if they were on the edge of something monumental. Outside, the reporters pressed closer, their voices a tangled mess of anticipation. Emily protested, but the tension in her voice rang hollow. "And yet that's what it feels like," he replied, his voice calm but raw with emotion. "I want to talk about our feelings, about taking a step forward together." "It's not about that," she insisted, tears pooling in her eyes. "I'm scared, Jake," he said, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "But this is tearing us apart. Maybe it's time to tell the truth, even if it's hard." The reporters outside were stirring, questions being shouted amongst themselves as they recognized the tension in the cafe. "Jake," one voice called out. "Maybe we should leave," she whispered, her voice fragile. Jake resisted the urge to roll his eyes. "Run away? No, I mean, think about it." He felt rage bubbling inside, mixing with his despair. She looked desperate, glancing back at the door as if the answer were hiding just out of sight. "This is too risky." "It's really not about what they think," he interrupted, his voice steady but intense. "You keep acting as if their opinion matters more than our feelings." Her expression softened slightly, but doubt still lingered in her eyes. He pleaded, leaning forward, searching her eyes for clarity. "Tell me what I need to do." Muffled voices drifted in from outside, growing louder as they became more frantic. The whole situation felt surreal, like they were stuck in a bubble while the world spun wildly around them. "I can't keep hiding," he finally blurted out, his voice cracking. For a split second, silence enveloped them, her face shifting as if he'd struck a nerve. She exclaimed, her voice rising. "You mean so much to me," he argued back, desperation flooding his tone. "If we don't take the risk, we won't know what can happen." Her eyes brimmed with tears and a flicker of vulnerability showed through her bravado. I don't want to lose you," she admitted softly. He shouted, drawing attention from the reporters outside. "You have me." At that moment, the door swung open and a couple of reporters rushed in, cameras flashing, their attention already focused on the drama unfolding in front of them. "Jake, Emily," another shouted, the excitement of the chase palpable. Emily whispered urgently, but Jake felt a surge of defiance rise in him. "No," he yelled to the throng of reporters. Emily looked at him, her face a mix of shock and admiration. For the first time, he could see a hint of something he hadn't noticed before: persistence, a spark of hope. One of the reporters pressed, eyes glinting with excitement. Jake inhaled deeply, steeling himself for what came next. "What I mean is that Emily and I are together, and we're not afraid to say it." The reporters froze in surprise, caught off guard by his boldness. Someone asked, curiosity piqued. "Absolutely," Emily chimed in, her voice clearer now as she regained her confidence. "We're together and we're committed." Outside, the crowd shifted, reporters exchanging glances as if trying to comprehend the moment unfolding before them. The tension that had once hung in the air felt charged with a new energy. A voice retorted from the back. Jake smirked, his earlier nerves beginning to dissipate. "To those people, I say this: real connections cannot be forged under the spotlight." The reporters seemed captivated, the rattling questions replaced by a sense of intrigue. As they processed his words, Jake felt a rush of relief. This was it, this was his moment. They weren't just two people at a cafe anymore, they were declaring their truth to the world. Another reporter asked, shifting focus. "It means everything," Emily replied, her voice steady, emboldened by Jake's confidence. With her words, the dynamic shifted. Jake felt pride swell in his chest, the warmth of solidarity coursing through him. They weren't just participants in a story anymore, they were the authors of their own narrative. As the reporters continued to hurl questions, Jake squeezed Emily's hand and she squeezed back, her grip firm and unyielding. They stood in the storm together, unfazed, ready to face whatever the world threw at them. In that moment, surrounded by chaos, they realized something profound: their relationship was no longer a secret. It was a bond built on honesty, understanding, and shared dreams, and it felt liberating. As the last questions were asked, their truth laid bare, Jake couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, they had turned a corner. They were ready to take on whatever the future held, together. As the chaos began to settle and the reporters started to disperse, Jake and Emily left the cafe hand in hand. The rain had stopped and the sun peeked through the clouds, illuminating the path ahead. They stepped into the world outside, not just as individuals but as partners, fearless and free. For the first time, they felt the exhilarating weight of the journey ahead, and the adventure of their lives had only just begun. The cafe buzzed with its usual hum, steam curling from cups of coffee, and a peaceful ambience wrapping around the small tables scattered throughout the room. But for Jake, the air felt thick with unspoken words. He sat at a corner table, his fingers nervously tracing the rim of his coffee cup, waiting for Sarah. This wasn't just any meeting, this was their moment. Today he would finally ask her the question that had been burning in his heart for months. When she entered, the world outside seemed to dim in comparison. Sarah walked in, shaking off the raindrops that clung to her coat like unwelcome visitors. A warm smile broke across her face as she spotted him, and it sent a wave of relief coursing through him. But as she settled at the table, that smile faded a little, her eyes flickering toward the window. "Hey, sorry I'm late," she said, her energy dimly lit. "It's okay," Jake managed to reply, his voice betraying the tension coiled in his chest. "I wanted to talk about," but as soon as he spoke, Sarah's gaze drifted outside. Jake followed and felt his stomach drop. Outside, a group of reporters had gathered, cameras gleaming like hungry wolves. They were waiting, and the weight of unspoken tension settled thickly around them. "Jake, they're here," Sarah whispered, panic flaring in her eyes. He leaned forward, desperate to bridge the gap that he could feel widening. "But we need to talk about what we were going to say." She deflected, still glancing anxiously outside. He echoed, heart racing. "This is our future we're talking about." He suddenly rose, catching the attention of nearby patrons. "It's the attention, Jake. We can't let them see us talking about personal things." His frustration flared. "Why is it risky for us to talk?" "Because they'll twist it." Sarah's eyes darted toward the window again, her fear palpable. "Then let them try." His voice was sharper now, the desperation seeping in. "I'm tired of this." Emily pressed her lips together, her eyes glistening with emotion. "You don't understand the pressure, Jake." He interrupted, feeling the anger rise within him. "You think talking about us is a weakness." Silence hung thick between them and the energy shifted. He could see her mind racing, trying to navigate through the sea of fear and doubt. "Look, I care about you," she finally said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. "But if they find out, it could ruin everything." Jake's heart sank. "And what about us?" he said, trying to pull her back to the moment. But her gaze flickered to the reporters outside, willing her to retreat from this conversation. "Maybe we should just leave," she suggested, her voice trembling with anxiety. "Leave?" He shook his head, incredulous. She shot back, frustration etched across her face. "Do you want to just stand here while they watch us break apart bit by bit?" He pressed, leaning closer, feeling the heat of the moment boiling over. "We ignore our feelings. I'm scared, Jake," she said finally, the fear cracking through her bravado. "What if this doesn't work? Then we face it together. Do you really think hiding will protect us? Because it won't. It's tearing me apart." He lowered his voice, trying to reach her heart. Silence fell between them as they stared into each other's eyes, a storm raging beneath the surface. Outside, the commotion had grown louder, a flurry of anticipation. He could sense the reporters circling like vultures, their questions waiting to be unleashed. Just then, Jake's phone vibrated violently on the table, breaking the moment. He glanced down to see a message flash across the screen. They are looking for a story. A wave of fear washed over him, but it fueled his determination. "Look," he said firmly, "I refuse to let fear dictate our lives anymore." But Emily's expression faltered. "You don't understand what's at stake. It's not just us." He blurted out, feeling the frustration unraveling his composure. "What about us?" Outside, the reporters were growing restless, their voices rising, ready to capture any fleeting moment. Another shout rang through the air. "Jake, what's going on?" As if some unseen force intervened, the room shifted. Emily's face twisted into panic, and she squeezed her eyes shut as if she could block the world out. "They're going to blow this thing up," she murmured. Jake placed his hand on hers, grounding them both. "Then let's take control, let's tell them the truth." She gasped, surprised by the suggestion. "Yes, we owe it to ourselves. Let them see us for who we really are and let them write their stories." He could see the fight in her fading, and for a moment, uncertainty washed over her features, mingling with fear. "Jake, there are dozens of reporters." Before she could finish, the door swung open and reporters flooded in, their excitement palpable as cameras clicked aggressively. "Jake," one shouted. Panic gripped Emily, but Jake could feel the sudden rush of boldness surge through him. He encouraged as they both rose to face the media. He locked eyes with her, holding her gaze as if to shield her from the storm that was approaching. "Say it with me," he urged. With a shaky breath, she nodded, gripping his hand tighter. He called out, raising his voice over the sea of questions. "Listen, yes, I have a relationship with Emily, and it's real." The reporters paused, surprised by his unfiltered honesty. He glanced at Emily, her eyes wide with astonishment, but there was also a flicker of resolve forming. A reporter asked, sensing the significance of the moment. Jake felt the warmth of clarity wash over him. "It means we're committed to each other and to this project. Together, we're stronger." The energy shifted again, the crowd captivated. Someone pressed. "Absolutely not," he asserted with confidence. The questions flooded in, more intense, more curious now. Sarah stepped forward, her voice growing stronger alongside her courage. "It's more than a project, it's about being true to ourselves. We're tired of hiding," and like that, the tide began to turn. The reporters, once predatory, seemed captivated by what they were witnessing, a love formed amid pressure, standing tall against scrutiny. One reporter asked, a serious undertone to their curiosity. Jake replied, adrenaline rushing through him, "What matters most is that we stand together." With each passing question, an unexpected warmth enveloped them. He felt Sarah's grasp tighten around his, a shared strength blossoming between them. "This is our choice," Emily declared, her face alight with a fierce determination that mirrored his own. As the reporters continued their barrage of questions, Jake felt a surge of exhilaration. They had transformed from mere participants in a reality show to the protagonists in their story. Finally, as the last question waned and the reporters faced their own decision whether to follow them or retreat, Jake and Sarah left the cafe, stepping back into the outside world hand in hand. The rain had stopped, allowing a delicate sunlight to break through the clouds, bathing them in warmth. Couples on the street laughed and walked by, and the chaos around them faded into a distant hum. She joked softly, a hint of laughter glistening in her eyes. "More than survive," Jake replied, grinning. As they began to walk forward, he felt lighter, the weight of uncertainty lifting with every step they took together. The world ahead felt bright, full of possibilities. They had chosen to take control of their story, and in doing so, they had set themselves free. Walking hand in hand, he knew they could now face anything together. And in that moment, life felt beautiful, like a new chapter just beginning, ripe with the promise of love, adventure, and authenticity. The rain battered the pavement outside the small café, creating a rhythmic melody that felt oddly comforting. Inside, the atmosphere was warm, filled with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the soft murmur of conversations. In the corner, beneath the golden glow of a hanging lamp, sat Mark, his fingers drumming an anxious beat on the table. He checked his watch for the third time, feeling the tension coil tighter in his chest. This was it. The meeting he had been waiting for, the moment to finally confront Jana about what had been brewing between them. But as he waited, a nagging sense of doubt began to cloud his mind. When Jana finally walked in, the door swung open with a burst of cold air. She was a whirlwind in her own right, shaking off droplets of rain like she was shaking off the troubles of the world. Her smile radiated warmth, but there was something fleeting about it, like catching a glimpse of a rare bird before it vanished. Mark's heart leaped at the sight of her, but that joy quickly morphed into anxiety when he noticed her distracted expression. She said, plopping down in the chair opposite him. "It's fine," he said, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. "I wanted to talk about..." But before he could delve deeper, Jana's gaze flickered toward the window. Mark followed her gaze and felt the color drain from his face. Outside, a group of reporters had gathered like predatory birds, cameras flashing, microphones poised like spears. The media were waiting for him, and the realization sent a chill down his spine. "Mark," she breathed, eyes widening with concern. Yeah, I can see that, he replied, trying to maintain composure. But can we focus on this? She exclaimed, glancing nervously outside. If they see us talking about anything personal, Mark's frustration bubbled to the surface. I want to know what this is between us, Jana. She shot back, her voice rising like an alarm. You don't know the half of it, Mark pressed, feeling anxiety morph into anger. I thought we had something real, she implored, her tone shifting now, softer but laced with anxiety. If they find anything, could hurt our careers, our reputations. Mark shot back, the words spilling out like boiling water. What about my feelings? Jana bit her lip, a flicker of guilt crossing her features. It's not that, she said, her voice shaking slightly. But if I let them see us like this, it could ruin everything. The tension hung heavy between them, suffocating as the noise from outside only seemed to grow louder. Mark wanted to reach across the table and take her hand to comfort her, but the invisible wall that had been erected felt impenetrable. What about us? He insisted, leaning closer. I feel like I'm talking to a ghost. At that moment, another shout burst through the cafe. Mark, are you dating Jana? His stomach twisted with dread. Every fiber of his being told him he needed to break through to her, to break down the barriers she'd built. We can't keep pretending, he said softly, searching her eyes. What are we? She hesitated, her expression flickering between worry and sorrow. He pressed, feeling the urgency rise within him. But if we go down this road, everything could unravel. I have so much to lose, she whispered, desperation creeping into her voice. As he looked into her eyes, he could see the fear, but there was also something else, a glimmer of a shared connection that they'd both been avoiding. He asked, his voice dropping to a softer tone. Jana looked down at her hands, visibly shaken. I don't want to lose you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Then let's show the world what we have, he declared, the passion igniting in his chest. Just then the door swung open violently and a larger group of reporters crowded in, their voices rising in urgency. Mark, the sound of chaos surged into the cafe. Jana looked haunted, panic flashing across her face, and Mark felt the weight of the moment. She whispered urgently, but he couldn't back down now. Mark exclaimed, frustration cracking like thunder in his voice. I'm not running from this anymore, she pleaded, eyes darting toward the door. He shouted, his heart racing. I want them to know who we are. Outside, the reporters pushed closer to the windows, shouting questions, cameras clicking like a relentless swarm of bees. One shouted, another added as the tension spiraled with all eyes glued to them. One reporter roared. Mark took a deep breath and summoned the courage he hadn't known he had. He shouted, the words bursting from him as if released from a dam. The room went quiet for a fleeting moment, the air thick with disbelief. He could feel the weight of all their questions hovering over him, but in that moment he felt liberated. Jana's eyes widened in shock, disbelief swirling within them. She gasped, I'm taking a stand, Mark declared. This is real. Voice yelled from the crowd, catching fire as interest in the unfolding narrative ignited. To the skeptics, all I can say is that love is not something to be ashamed of, Mark replied, his heart racing with adrenaline. The reporters shifted, their excitement palpable. Sarah stood speechless, her earlier fear giving way to a different kind of energy. He could see her wrestling with the flood of emotion, and he hoped she could feel the strength of their shared moment. A voice called out, the tension crackling in the air. Mark took a moment, grounding himself. Not at all, if anything, it makes us stronger. And then, like a wave crashing onto a shore, the reporters surged forward, all firing questions at them at once. Through it all, Mark held onto Jana's hand, drawing strength from her presence. They were in this together, at least for now, and it felt incredibly powerful. Another reporter shouted, relentless in their pursuit of the next big scoop. Mark felt a rush of adrenaline. What's happening here isn't just a PR move, this is real life. Suddenly, the crowd outside began to cheer as someone else arrived, someone important, someone known. Mark could feel the energy shift, and in an instant, the focus of the reporters turned toward the newcomer. Jana whispered, her voice wavering, but Mark didn't have time to answer. All he could do was watch as the camera flashes lit up the entrance, illuminating the chaos they had just created. Then, without warning, the door swung open once more, revealing a familiar face, his boss, the very person whose approval had hung over his head for months. Mark, his boss shouted, clearly caught off guard. Panic surged through him, quickly overshadowing the adrenaline-fueled moment. The questions from the reporters turned to demands, and Mark could feel everything spiraling out of control. As his heart raced, he locked eyes with Jana. In that split second, he could see the dismay mirrored in her gaze, the fear returning, mingling with uncertainty. She urged, trying to pull away. He shouted, desperately trying to hold on to this moment. No, we've come too far to back down now. His boss stepped forward, eyes narrowed in disbelief. You're making a huge mistake. In that instant, Mark felt the ground shift beneath him. The energy had changed, and the reality of the situation crashed down like a wave. He was standing at a crossroads, one path leading toward everything he'd ever wanted, and the other leading into the abyss of uncertainty. With cameras flashing around him and the expectations of the crowd heavy on their shoulders, Mark realized the stakes had never been higher. Love and ambition clashed in a way he had never anticipated, and he could feel the tension building, threatening to erupt. Jana exclaimed, urgency coloring her tone. The reporters continued shouting questions, the chaos encircling them like a tightening noose. He felt torn, his heart racing as the weight of the world settled on his shoulders. Everything he had ever built was now hanging in the balance, and then, with a single word, the moment spiraled ever further out of control. "I'm sorry," he muttered, his voice barely audible over the chaos, as he began to realize their reality was about to change forever. The walls closed in as he stood on the precipice of uncertainty, uncertain of what would happen next, knowing that one decision could lead them all into darkness, or open the door to the light they had desperately been seeking.